fellow church family, Pastor Craig with your daily devotion. And so we're moving forward looking with some different things that are essentials as far as what we understand relating to Christianity, but not necessarily essentials unto salvation per se. But these are things that we want to discuss and have some understanding on, and understanding that there are some people who might have different understandings in some ways, and being willing to extend grace as we work through, talk through, and even in some cases agree to disagree on some of those things. And so, philosophically, as we go back and we look through mankind, through history, we see some key or some core philosophical questions that seem to come around and be a root of the questioning that mankind has as we look at some things. And one of these is like the big mysteries, the mystery of being. For instance, the mystery of being, where did I come from? Or the mystery of purpose, okay, so I exist, no, but why do I exist? Or the mystery of death, what happens when I die? And many great philosophers through the ages have looked at these and so many other quandaries, if you will, trying to understand and unravel these different things and understanding or expressing different states of being as far as past and present and future, just to understand, again, where we came from and where we're going. And then just to understand existence and the things around us. And there's plenty of schools out there and colleges and schools of thought that have existed all throughout mankind to explore these different things and just to, with great depth of thought, to try and reason through, dream through, process through these deep questions of our existence. And some of them are deep and some of them are a little bit shallower. I mean, like, for instance, this one has kind of been around for a long time. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does the tree make a sound? Who knows these things? I read this one, it's going through the study. It says, a man never steps in the same stream twice. There's been some really depth of understanding that have come through. But again, philosophically, there are people that really dwell into these things that seem maybe kind of surfacey or casual. But it's all about deep reasoning and deep thinking, again, to understand existence and our state of being. And this burden or this task that we have, why do these things exist in every age and in every stage and in every culture around the world? And the answer is because God has placed this on man's heart. We think about Solomon, who was the wisest man, we say, that ever lived. God actually came to him and he said, I'll grant you, a request, ask of me what you will. And God said to him, I'll give it to you. Now, Solomon could have asked for fame, he could have asked for fortune, he could have asked for all these different things, but instead, all he asked for was wisdom to understand, a discerning heart to know, and to be a good leader for God's people. And because of his unselfishness in this request, God granted it to him, and he gave him wisdom and knowledge and discernment. So he gave him knowledge and understanding of things, and wisdom, which is the application of knowledge, and then he gave him discernment, that is the ability to understand right from wrong, good from evil. And to take these three things, knowledge, wisdom, and discernment, and God said, I'm giving it to you in such a way that I have never given it to anyone else, nor will I give it to anyone after you. So as we look at Solomon's writings, we find wisdom and discernment from a man who was given to by God in such a way that no one has ever received before. And so many of the questions, so some of these deep questions, are found within Solomon's writings and certainly within God's writings. But we consider, as we look at the origin of self and our purpose for being and what happens when we die, lots of different philosophical approaches and addresses to these. But the one thing that is consistent and true that we're going to come back to is the only one consistent and true source that we have, and that is God. And we find that in God's revelation to us. But again, this understanding of why we constantly are asking these big questions, again, it's because God has placed this on our hearts. Ecclesiastes 1:13 tells us this. Solomon said, I've set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on the sons of men to keep them occupied. God has given us this desire to keep us busy, to keep our minds working, to keep us searching, to keep us looking for the answers, not to become fat, dumb, happy, and lazy, but to constantly be asking ourselves more and more, deeper and deeper questions for a reason and for a purpose. Ecclesiastes 3, verses 10 through 11. Solomon says, I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. Psalm says, God has put eternity in man's heart. This is why we know that something is that after death. This is why we know that we are more than just this flesh that we walk around in, because God has put eternity into mankind's heart. And that explains why every culture, every age is always seeking to answer these questions of where we came from, what is our purpose for being, and again, what's going to happen when we die. So, but within philosophical questions, we have these bigger questions that come out, like does God really exist, or is God really the source of all reality? What does it mean when God says that he transcends over his all creation? Is there truly a morality? Is there a standard for morality? Is there truly goodness? Is there truly evil? And is God the source for these things, or is God the standard by which these things are judged? And so, again, just deep questions about all the things that God is, and his omniscience, and his divinity, and his sovereignty, and our free will, as we look to see how all these things come together, and how all these pieces of the puzzle come together to make the full picture. And so it helps us to keep going and asking questions. Why? Why does God do all this? Why does he put eternity into man's heart? To keep us asking these questions. What is God's purpose for this? And the answer is so that we will keep asking the questions until we realize that the answer is God. This is the purpose for him placing eternity in our hearts, that keep us asking these questions, is so that we will find the answer, and the answer is God. So let's take, for instance, the answer of creation. And where did we come from? Where does creation come from? And so I would say, here's a couple of our options. There are probably some others, but here's a couple. Say, number one would be from nothing to New York. That is to say that we went from absolutely nothing, and then all of a sudden, spontaneously, all things were created from nothing, and they became everything. And then through a process of evolution, here we are. So from nothing to New York, that would be one option. Another option would be the aliens did it. If you were an X-Files watcher back in the days, they said that the truth was out there, and that someday we'll have this revelation of truth from alien intelligence that will come and say, oh yeah, that was us. We planted you there like a garden of cucumbers. And number three would be to understand that there is an intelligent designer. As we look at all things that are, we just realize that there is an intelligence behind these things, kind of the wizard behind the curtain mentality, and then to try and seek out that intelligence to understand those things. But as we look at even those three options, we realize that there's really only one solution that really answers the questions, and that can really be trustworthy and true. Because out of all of those, only one proves itself through the presentation of all that has been created. And only one has revealed itself in specific personal revelation to reveal that which is true. And again, only one explains itself through teachings and through ongoing works and miracles. And so yes, the answer is God. God is the answer to these things as we look at all of creation. Consider Genesis 1. And in your own time, you can read through the first couple chapters of Genesis. But I mean, as we ask, well, how did all things come to be? And out of all these other possibilities, philosophical and otherwise, Genesis 1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and all things were created through him. So we know that, and we trust that, and we seek him. In Colossians 1, verses 16 through 17, it says, for by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers, authorities, all things were created before him, and in him all things hold together. Consider that. All things are held together by God. So seek him. He's got the answers. And we're going to continue to go in this lesson and just to grow in our understanding of things philosophical and seeing God's answer through his word. So hang in there. We'll see you next time.